Well, hello and welcome to this week's Real Love Revolution video called Let's Talk About Sex, Baby. All right, I'll spare you and I won't sing the salt and pepper song, which is what I feel like singing. Before we dive into this topic, that is a topic that is a problem for so many people. Talking about sex, honestly, knowing what they want sexually, but then the biggest blocker is talking to their partner about what feels good and what they want and being honest about it. So before we dive into this content, which can be a little prickly for some people, I want you to bust out some lavender oil. This happens to be Peace and Calm for my friend Lara. And I want you to be somewhere where you can close the door and really get honest. I'm actually going to give you guys a downloaded limiting blueprint around sex that you can download. The link will be below. Take a nice deep breath so that you can actually check out your own, get real with yourself about what is your own situation around sex. How satisfied are you? How well do you know yourself sexually? How willing to know yourself are you? So take your lavender or your Peace and Calm or whatever you have. Take a nice deep breath in through your nose and exhale. Let's do that one more time. And exhale. Now I want you to ground yourself right here, right now. Give yourself the gift of actually being present during this video because it is kind of a deep topic that lots of people have lots of feelings about. So let's start with the differences between the sex, shall we? The sexes, right? So when you're married or in a long-term relationship, it's really easy for your sex life to become derailed. When you're in a new relationship, it's really easy for it to seem like, wow, it's always going to be this hot, this exciting, this interesting, because it's the beginning of a relationship. Now you have to understand that as relationships grow and change, so does the way that you relate to your partner, right? There's a deepening, there's a deeper knowing of who that person is and what they want. So the mystery of the beginning of a relationship is part of the thing that keeps it very erotic. What are they going to do? How are they? How are they going to feel about my body? How do I feel about their body? There's all of these types of questions that once you know someone, have had a family with them, or in a long-term relationship with them, and keep in mind, as you grow and change, your body grows and changes as well. So there's so many things from having children to menopause to illnesses to being out of shape to gaining weight that can impact the way you feel sexually and how sexual you feel. So before getting into any of those things, let's just talk about the differences between the sexes when it comes to sex. We are very different. Men are indeed from Mars and women are from Venus when it comes to sex, for sure. Being a psychotherapist for 20 years, I can tell you that this is something that comes up over and over again, that neither person, especially when the communication sucks between them, is feeling satisfied in the sexual part of the relationship. But so much of that has to do with things outside of the sexual relationship. So the differences between the sex we're going to hit first. Men, what is their orientation? It's a very physical orientation around sex. Women, it's more relational, a more relational orientation. Men have the ability to compartmentalize. Heterosexual men, you could be having a fight, be mad, and you could just say, hey, do you want to have sex? And now I know that sounds like a stereotype, but I would say that many times most heterosexual men would be like, okay, like we could put this fight on hold and get back to it later. Women, it's a much more holistic orientation around sex. If they're mad at you, most women, unless this is a part of their dysfunction, which we can get into later, because a lot of couples do that fighting and having sex thing. Usually there's a fighting and another F word, but I feel like how much cursing can I do on these videos and not have my mother be super pissed? So fighting and having sex. Some people are really into makeup sex and whatever, but that's a dysfunction we're going to get into later. Right now, I'm just talking about the basic generalized differences between men and women when it comes to sex. Men's orientation is more variety around sex. Women's orientation is having more security around sex. For men, sex can be a high priority. And again, I'm not making sweeping generalizations. I'm saying from statistical data that this is statistically true. That doesn't mean it applies to every single person watching this video, and it may not apply to you. For women, other priorities may be higher. So what is it that stimulates men and what is it that stimulates women? Men are stimulated by sight, smell, and it's a very body-centered experience, a very physical experience. Women are stimulated by touch, attitudes, actions, words, and it's very person-centered. So women don't really like to be objectified, like as a sex object. They need to feel, in a long-term relationship, I'm assuming, they need to feel that it matters who they are. Men have a need for respect, for admiration, to be physically needed, right? And to not be put down. And women have a need to be understood, right? So much of the time you'll be talking to your husband or your partner about a problem that you're having, and they're like, just do this. They just want to fix it. You're like, hi, I just want to talk about it. Can you just care that I'm having an experience? I don't actually need you to fix it. I just need you to understand what I'm saying. Women have a need to be loved, to be emotionally needed, and they need to spend time with the partner. And these are all of the things that put someone in a place to be open to being sexual. So those right there are the differences between the sexes. What I can tell you from being a psychotherapist for so long is that the things that I saw over and over again when I used to do couples therapy 1,000 years ago is that I would always give couples who came in a questionnaire, and the questionnaire would have to do with what was happening outside of the bedroom, because I knew that the conflicts and that the needs that were not getting met somewhere else in the relationship was absolutely having a negative impact on one or the other's desire to be sexual. So for the women, so much of the time, they felt that their partner, they weren't helping them enough, either with children or with housework. And that after a long day where she felt like she did everything, especially working women. So they're working full time and then coming home and doing most of the chores. And this sounds like it's the 1950s, you guys, but it's not. This is still happening right now in many, many, many households. And what they really want is help. And so I used to try to get the men in the practice who were coming in with their partner to reframe. Is it possible that you could think about doing the dishes or helping more or putting in an effort where your wife has asked you to or needs you to as foreplay? Because that's actually what it is to her. So if she feels neglected or marginalized or unimportant during the day, she asks you to do things, you don't do them, you procrastinate, you put them on a list, it doesn't happen. And then you get into bed and you're like, hey man, want to get busy? No, she would rather read People magazine because she's seething and she's pissed. So again, it may not seem like there's a connection, but there is. And I think that the men's complaint would be if they were feeling unvalued, like their contribution. They need to be appreciated. They need to feel like they're adding value in some way. So you have a lot of women who are massive overfunctioners, and the truth is they don't act like, and they don't perhaps need, quote unquote, their partner. And that takes away some of the sexual desire for the partner because they feel very emasculated by that experience. So anyway, those are a couple of things. But if you're in a long-term relationship and because of kids or illness or menopause or whatever it is, you've gotten away from having sex on a regular basis or being sexual, listen, it's like riding a bike. So even if it's been a while, it's okay. You can get back on the bike. And in fact, you can make it better than it was before. But you have to be willing to do some work, and you have to be willing to look at your part in what isn't working. And if you're pissed off at your partner and you're not saying anything about it, but you're basically acting it out, that's another thing that you really have to deal with, because that does not work. It just doesn't. It doesn't work in the long run, and it doesn't work in the short run, right? Because whatever we're not, I've said it before, you guys, whatever you don't talk out, what do? All together now. You act it out. So, in all these small ways of withholding ourselves from our lovers or our partners, you're acting out something that you don't have words for. But what ends up happening is that it really damages the foundation of the union. So it's important to see what are the things outside of the bedroom that are making you not want to have sex. And don't worry, if you haven't had sex in a long time and you feel like, forget it, it's too long. I can't, it's like, we waited too long. Like it's done. You know what I mean? It's not done, and it's never done. So that you can start right now in this video, and decide what it is that you're willing to do to change, to bring some fire, to bring some connection back into your relationship. So now let's get to the list of actions that you can take right now, today, tonight, to add some more heat into your relationship, or bring the heat back, or get to know yourself better sexually, because those are all super important things. So what do you think the number one thing for couples who keep it good for decades and decades is around sex? Yes, let's talk about sex, baby. It's sexual communication. Being able to talk about it. If you cannot talk about it, how will your partner ever know what it is that you actually want? You have to be able to say what it is that you want, and the only way that you can say what it is that you want is you have to know what it is that you want. Be super specific. Instead of saying what you don't like about what your partner is doing, say, do you know what I loved? I loved it when you did this thing, or I would love it if you did this thing. Being able to communicate sexually is the number one indicator of having a healthy, vibrant sex life. Guessing when there are 800 million things that your partner could do to your body, and if they've been doing it for years and you don't like it, but you haven't told them, you don't have to tell them you don't like what they're doing. You have to make a suggestion or make a simple request of what they could do. And you could do it while you're having sex, it's fine. But you have to tell them. Because if you're not telling the truth, how could they ever know what it is that you want? And ask your partner specifically, do you like it when I do this? Do you like it when I do that? But be specific about whatever it is that you're doing. The second thing is sexual curiosity. Having sex with the same partner for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, that's a long time. You might want to be bringing in new things, something that's interesting, and being curious, because so many couples get into the rut of, I do this, you do that, now we're done, great. That was, 7 minutes and now it's over. And there's, in a way you're checking off your box, like you're doing your due diligence, but are you really present, or are you just wanting to check off a box? Because they're two different things. So sexual curiosity, hugging, kissing, making out. I mean, when's the last time you made out with a long-term partner? Plan it, do it. So sexual curiosity. And I want to say the next thing is setting the mood, but I call it the long game, because this is really about, if you've been together for a long time, it's making references to tonight, like be flirtatious, sexual texts. I don't mean sexting necessarily. I just mean, I can't wait to see you later. Planting the seed of some anticipation. Go out on a date, get dressed up, shave your legs, right? Brush your teeth. Care about what your partner is experiencing when they are making out with you, right? Make sure that you're taking good care of your mouth and that your breath is nice. Nobody wants to make out with someone with plaque breath. Sorry, and if you're not flossing every night, trust me, you have plaque breath and no one is telling you. Anyway, not to be an oral hygiene freak, but I kind of am. So setting the mood for the long game is sort of just doing that, the day of, whatever it is, planting that seed, having anticipation, right? Your partner wants to feel desired, and you want to feel desired. It's so important to verbally tell them that you want them and that they look good to you still, right? And if they don't, because they've let themselves go, this is another conversation, that will be another video, because that is something too. I mean, Vic and I have a commitment to not do that, because if you're not healthy, if he's not healthy, that really impacts my life. That impacts every part of my life, because he's the most important person in my life, not just desire-wise, in every way. So we'll get to that when we get to a couple's vision, right? So what are the other things? Self-conscious sex is constricted sex. So all of the women, and I know all of you, who are worried about the way your boobs look because you had children and you breastfed, you're worried about your thighs and think they're too fat. This person that you've been with for years, this person that you've made human beings with, men are not looking at you in the same horrendously critical way that you were looking at yourself. And I promise you that constricted, self-conscious sex is super not sexy. So you've really got to give yourself freedom, right? It's okay to have a little fear, I understand it, but have faith that your partner does love you and desires you the way that you are, and that it's your mafia mind, your critical mind, that is making you feel terrible about the way that you look. Do not bring that into the bedroom. It is so unsexy. The next thing is think about fantasies. Fantasies, this is a very normal part of a healthy sex life, right? But they're meant for sharing, not just in your mind. And the only way that you'll be able to do this is if you're in a non-judgmental relationship around being sexual. Together, plot and plan that you will be adventurous and that you will try something. Don't judge someone's fantasies. You think you're so special, fantasy-wise? Oh, you're so worried you've got such weird fantasies? Google top 20 sexual fantasies. I guarantee you, every single one you've ever had is in that top 20 list. People, we're all wired the same. So whatever it is, whatever puritanical upbringing that you had, that tells you that fantasies are terrible and wrong. They're not. This is a normal part of the human sexual relationship. And it doesn't mean you have to share it, but the bottom line is when you've been together for 20, 30 years, it's nice to. So, and if you can't do that because that's too hard or that would be too embarrassing, there are other things that you can do. Another thing on the list is, what about reading erotica together, something like that, or watching movies? And I don't mean porn, right? Because porn is mainly made by men for men. So I don't know any women who like porn, honestly. I don't. That's a true story. A romantic, sexual, kind of a hot movie that seems like it's real, actual, normal people, that could be interesting. Watching something together that's romantic, that's sexual, that's erotic, can set the mood as well. I'm also going to have a bunch of ideas for books for you guys. There's a great book that's written by lesbians for heterosexual men. Basically everything you ever wanted to know about sex from lesbians, like how women really want it. It's a great book. It's been out. They just revised it. I tell every client to buy it for their husband because, trust me, the husband will be grateful. And then there's also books written by gay men for heterosexual women about things, about how to really do interesting and exciting things to your partner that they'll probably never tell you about. And hey, you may not want to do them, but why not? Open your mind. And if you don't want to do either one of those, don't buy the books. I just figure I'll give you a resource. All right, communication, what else did we hit? Helping with the housework is foreplay. All right, you already got that. The last thing that I want to say about sex is it's about your downloaded blueprint from the house that you grew up in. I just mentioned before the puritanical, perhaps. I grew up in a house where there was definitely no talk of sex. I just knew my mother did not want me to have it. That is for sure. And so I didn't for a very long time until I had a really long-term boyfriend and I was 18. Like, the thought of being promiscuous was completely out because of the way that I was raised. But that also means no one teaches you in any healthy way about sex, right? So I'm including a link for you guys to get the downloaded limiting sex blueprint, all about the way that you were raised, so that when you answer these empowered questions that I've created for you, you'll really get an idea of how your own sexual blueprint came into being. And that's the first and most important way to change it. So I know this was a lot, but you know, real love revolution, people. Revolution means we got work to do, and so we're doing it. I hope that you liked this video. If you did, please share it on social media. Please drop me a comment. We've been having the most incredible discussions on these videos on YouTube, so please Subscribe to the YouTube if you're not on my list, which I think you probably are if you're here. If not, go to terricole.com, get on my list, get a bunch of free stuff. I hope you have an amazing week and that you're going to do some of the homework that I've given you in this video. And yeah, as always, take care of you and your sexuality.